Good evening, everyone. It is Sunday, April 24th. We are holding right now. First of all, it's one day after Passover. I've also become aware that part of the audience, perhaps even a significant number of the audience of this podcast, is currently involved in a 40-day religious fast, and I want to wish all of you an easy fast. Let's go back to North Platte, Nebraska again. Friday afternoon, the temperatures throughout the Nebraska area generally are in the 80s. The dew points start off in the 50s in the morning. They gradually drop into the upper 40s to low 50s, upper 40s with a temperature in the low 80s by about 1 o'clock p.m. As we go through the afternoon, as the dew points drop, those dew points contain energy. When the dew points drop, they release their energy, and the energy goes into the temperatures, and the temperatures go way up. That's why North Platte, Nebraska got so hot. The forecast was a high somewhere between 91 and 93 degrees. The record high was 92 degrees. So there's a 40-degree difference between the dew points between West Nebraska and East Nebraska. There should be a very significant temperature difference as well, not just a mere 5 degrees, mid-80s or 7 degrees, mid-80s in the eastern part of Nebraska and low 90s in the western part of Nebraska. Now, under mostly cloudy skies, the temperature hit 97 degrees later on in the afternoon. It did not hit 97 by the hour, so you're not going to find the 97 degrees on the hourly conditions. It only goes up to 96, which occurred at approximately 4 o'clock p.m. But you do see the dew points drastically drop, and that's when those temperatures go way up. A person could argue, and they could say it has nothing to do with the dropping dew points. It has to do with the fact that the sun is out. I mean, it was cloudy, but the sun was out, and the day's going on and on, so the temperatures are going up and up. But you could take a look at some other cities, and you'll see something similar, especially in St. Louis, Missouri. Temperatures went up to 87 degrees in St. Louis, and over there you also had a dew point that dropped drastically. Dew point that dropped drastically in the afternoon, and the temperature soared into the mid and upper 80s across the St. Louis area as those dew points dropped to 48 degrees. That did not occur Friday in St. Louis. That occurred on Shabbos, on Saturday. Now, going back to North Platte, Nebraska for a second, you look at the heat index. The National Weather Service has a heat index chart. The heat index was 91 degrees at the time that the temperature was 96 degrees. I don't have the information for what the heat index was or the dew point at the time the temperature was 97 degrees. But the heat index was 91 degrees. That's because a dew point of 31 degrees, when the temperature is 96 degrees, the evaporative cooling is extremely intense because there's enormous amounts of evaporation that's taking place because the air is so dry. Therefore, the temperatures actually feel cooler than what a normal 96 degrees would feel like. Now, we mentioned, however, there's another component to this, and I wanted to explain this. We explained that when there's strong winds, especially when you get to 30, 35 miles per hour, those types of winds, if you're on a motorcycle, you're going to feel this, especially in the Phoenix, Arizona area. Cyclists, they know this to be true, those that ride motorcycles, that it's much hotter in the wind when it's brutally hot. When temperatures are above 95 degrees, it gets hotter. The question is why? Why does the wind always makes a person feel colder? But when the temperature is 95 degrees or warmer, the wind makes a person feel hotter. And why is that? And I'm going to explain right now that I believe there's 2 reasons for this. Number one, the reason wind makes you feel cooler, one reason, is because it blows your body heat away. Now, your body temperature is 98.6 degrees. So, in theory, let's say, if the temperature is 98.6 degrees out, let's say it's 99 degrees out, so the wind is no longer blowing your body heat away. It's actually blowing suffocating heat in your face. But if that's the case, the question is, how come the wind starts to make conditions feel hotter already at 95 degrees? And the answer to that is because it doesn't have to do with your internal body temperature. It has to do with your skin surface temperature, which is about 95 degrees. So when the temperature is 95 degrees, a wind comes, it makes it feel hotter. That at least that component of blowing the body heat away is no longer taking shape over there. That doesn't happen anymore because it's no longer blowing the body heat away. But there's a much more significant cooling effect that happens due to the wind blowing, and that's called evaporative cooling. Your body sweats, and the process of the evaporation of the sweat cools your body off. That's the natural air conditioner. It's when that's when the energy of the temperature, those temperatures go down because the energy gets transferred into the evaporation process. Evaporating the sweat requires energy, and it robs the air of its heat. So the temperatures go down, and it makes you feel cooler. Now, but if it is so hot and it is so dry that the evaporation is taking place so quickly that you don't even have a chance to get wet. There's not even a chance to get wet. So then the air conditioning, the natural air conditioning system of the body completely shuts down, just like it does in humid air, which is amazing. In humid air, because it's so humid, the evaporation rate goes way down. So the body no longer has an effective natural air conditioner. The body doesn't have a way to cool itself off because the sweat's not evaporating in an efficient way. So the temperatures feel much warmer. It's very similar when it's hot and dry and windy. If it should be humid out, interestingly enough, if it's humid out and it's 95 degrees, the wind will make it feel cooler because the evaporation rate is not intense enough to completely dry you. You will still feel sweat. As long as you still feel sweat, the wind will be effective at cooling things off. So if there's high humidity, however, eventually, even with high humidity, eventually the wind will make conditions feel hotter, even when there's high humidity. It just doesn't happen at 95 degrees. It's going to happen probably closer to 98 or 99 degrees. In North Platte, Nebraska, the relative humidity was 10%. I don't even know why people talk about relative humidity because the main thing is the dew point. The dew point was 31 degrees. This is super dry stuff, the type of stuff that occurs in Death Valley, California. It was super dry. The evaporation rate had to have been very, very high. I wasn't there. I wonder what people have to say about what happened on Friday out there. The sun was not out. If the sun was out, that makes temperature feel approximately another 15 degrees warmer, says the National Weather Service. It was mostly cloudy. I don't know how thick the clouds were. I don't know how thin the clouds were. I didn't look it up. But those were two reasons why conditions feel hotter when the wind is blowing. The wind will actually make it feel hotter. Not just hotter, it's actually a suffocating heat. There's certain races they have in Kansas, and there are times when there's heat illness and different things that take place in these bike racing and motorcycle racing races, and the times when the illness reaches its peak is days which are windy, not days with high humidity. Kansas fluctuates between the dry and wet line. That's the dry line when you have warm, moist air coming off the Gulf of Mexico from the southeast flow, and then you have southwest hot, dry desert air, and they run into each other. That creates a front. It's the dry front. That's what we had in Nebraska on Friday. That's also ideal. It's an ideal setup for thunderstorms and tornadoes because, believe it or not, its humid air is less dense. It's lighter than dry air. So therefore, the humid air sinks into the dry air. No, the other way around. The dry air sinks into the humid air. You would think that humid air, which has water vapor, we would think that it's heavier. That's what we would think, but it's not. Air without water vapor is actually heavier. The water vapor is the gas, and it actually makes the air lighter. Moving right along, blizzard warnings remained in effect throughout the North Dakota area for today. The storm is weakening, however. We have another storm system coming later on in the week, a weak one for Wednesday night into Thursday for parts of North Dakota. A stronger one Friday night into Shabbos. There's also a chance for precipitation here in the Midwest earlier in the week, and then again Thursday night through Friday. There's that weak storm system, and then a more significant storm system for Shabbos into Sunday. All of these things eventually push off to the East Coast. We have that cold front that moved through the Chicago area today. It remains warm and it remains rather humid, actually, and that cold front is headed off to the East Coast. If we look in the weather map today, You'll see a large contrast in temperatures between Virginia, which was under southwest winds, and places like in Pennsylvania, which were experiencing east and northeast winds. And then Baltimore was somewhere in between. It would be interesting to see what it actually ended up happening in Baltimore. The forecast model that I looked at showed that temperatures would make it well into the 70s in mid-afternoon and then drop drastically. And it really looked like it's in response to the cooler air coming in off the ocean, even though in a certain way, really, there was a flow off the ocean the entire day. Washington, D.C. was expected to go into the 80s, and we have really cold air aloft, record-breaking cold air aloft moving into the northeast this week. But we do have something in Iowa. It was the first time this year where they were experiencing cold advection. They have cold air aloft. They're in a cold air mass, yet it was beautiful outside. And it's something similar here in the Chicago area, although for Chicago it's the second time this year, maybe even the third time this year. Temperatures remain warm. You just have the sun is out, and that's the reason why, actually. Parts of Iowa remain under cloud cover, but there was a dry slot of the storm system that pushed into parts of Iowa. It's not so easy to forecast that dry slot, but it dried up all the clouds. The sun came out and temperatures got warmer than what was originally forecasted. Dew points over this past weekend approached 70 degrees in Iowa. I found in Des Moines, Iowa, the dew point hit 68 or 69 degrees. That's one of the highest readings in the Midwest. It's the highest reading that I saw in the Midwest. And even on the Gulf Coast, it's been a struggle to get dew points that high for some reason, and I don't know why. Anyways, thank you all for listening. I wish you all a great night and a great week, and to those of my fan club that are fasting tomorrow, have an easy fast.